I thought the worst part of wedding planning would be deciding whether the DJ could get away with playing Mr. Brightside without starting a millennial stampede. But on a cold Tuesday in January 2026, while I was eating leftover chili at my desk and pretending I cared about a spreadsheet, my phone lit up with a bank alert that made my stomach turn to ice. It was one of those polite little notifications that acts like everything is normal while your life quietly catches fire, and it said a new line of credit had been opened in my name, followed by a charge that was not small, not accidental, and definitely not mine, because I had not just spent nearly $8,000 on a boutique bridal shop in the suburbs when I was a 34-year-old guy in Milwaukee with a fiancée who had already bought her dress months ago, and yet there it was, sitting in my account history like a smug fingerprint. I stared at it for so long my screen dimmed, then I tapped it again like it might change out of embarrassment, and all I could think was that this felt familiar in the way bad weather feels familiar, like you see the clouds roll in and you know exactly who is going to get struck by lightning. My sister, Madison, had a gift for that kind of thing, the kind of gift that somehow looked like charisma to everyone else, but up close was just control wrapped in a shiny bow. She was the golden child in our family, the one my parents described with that proud tone they saved for her and only her, the one who could forget birthdays and still get forgiveness, the one who could quit jobs dramatically and still be called ambitious, the one who could take and somehow make you feel rude for noticing. I was the older brother, the dependable one, the one who got the speech about being mature whenever Madison caused chaos, which meant I spent most of my life learning how to swallow my frustration and smile like it tasted fine. I was engaged to Hannah, and that's the part that still makes me laugh a little, because I had finally built something that felt like mine, not Madison's stage, not my parents' expectations, not the old story where I was the supporting character in my own life. Hannah and I met in the most unromantic way possible, at a friend's backyard cookout in the summer of 2022. While someone's labradoodle kept stealing hamburger buns and everyone yelled like it was a crime scene, and she was the kind of person who made calm feel contagious. When I proposed last fall, she cried and laughed at the same time, then made me promise we would keep the wedding simple and real in ours, because she had seen enough family drama in her own life to know that weddings can turn into performance art if you let the wrong people direct the show. Madison, of course, heard the word wedding and treated it like a spotlight had been installed in our living room specifically for her. She offered to help, which in her vocabulary meant she wanted access, and she wanted influence, and she wanted the satisfaction of saying she did it better, and my mom practically floated with relief because Madison being involved meant my mom could feel important by proxy. My dad did his usual thing where he tried to stay neutral, which in our house translated to letting Madison set the temperature while the rest of us adjusted our sweaters. So when I saw that charge, my first instinct was not surprise. It was a tired kind of dread, like my body had been waiting for Madison's next move. I called the bank, froze the account, and listened to the customer service guy explain identity theft procedures in that gentle voice people use when they are talking to someone having a quiet panic. Then I drove straight to my parents' house because if Madison had done this, I needed to look her in the eye while she tried to lie, and I needed my parents to hear it in real time before they could rewrite it into some story where she was misunderstood and I was dramatic. When I walked in, the smell of my mom's pot roast hit me like a memory, and for a split second I was back in high school, standing in the kitchen while Madison talked over me and my mom nodded like Madison was narrating a documentary. Madison was already there, sitting at the counter with a glossy iced coffee and that effortless smile that always made strangers think she was friendly, and she looked up at me like I had interrupted her day, not like I had just found a financial landmine with her name stamped all over it. I said, "Madison, did you open a credit line in my name?" My mom made a little noise, the one that meant I was being unpleasant at an inconvenient time, and Madison blinked slowly, then tilted her head like she was considering whether my words were worth responding to. She said, "Wow, Ethan, hello to you too, what are you even talking about?" I told her exactly what I was talking about, and I watched the moment her eyes flicked to my mom, because Madison always checked the room for allies first, like a politician. My mom's face tightened, and my dad looked up from his recliner, remote in hand, like he wanted the TV to be louder so he could pretend not to hear. Madison laughed lightly and said, "I have no idea what you mean, but you really need to relax. Wedding stress is making you paranoid." That was the moment something in me shifted. Not exploding, not dramatic, just a quiet click, like a lock turning. Because I realized she was not even afraid. She was comfortable. She expected the old pattern where I brought a problem and she brought a smile and my parents chose her version because it was easier, and I went home carrying the mess like I always did. I pulled out my phone and showed them the alert, the charge, the date, the store name, and the card number tied to the new account, and Madison's smile stayed in place but her eyes changed, just slightly, and if you have lived with a person like Madison long enough you learn to notice those micro cracks. My dad said, "Madison, tell me you did not do that." Madison sighed like my dad had asked her to take out the trash. Then she said, "You are all making this such a big thing. I used his information to reserve something, that's all. It's not like I stole it, I was going to pay it back as soon as my bonus hits." My mom immediately leaned in like she had been handed the script she preferred, and she said, "See, Ethan, she was going to pay it back, she probably just panicked, planning is expensive." I stared at my mom, and I swear I could feel 10 years of being dismissed stacking up in my throat. Because Madison did not panic. Madison calculated. And the sudden event that disrupted my normal life was not just the fraud. It was the old reality returning. Right when I was trying to start a new one. And then Madison said the line that lit the fuse. She said, "Honestly, if you cannot even handle finances, maybe you are not ready to get married." Act 2 Escalation of conflict. After that night, everything got worse in the way a small leak becomes a flooded basement when nobody admits the pipe is broken. I filed the fraud report, put a credit freeze on everything, and spent hours on the phone trying to unwind the mess. And Madison acted like I was inconveniencing her by refusing to be quietly robbed. My parents did the thing I expected, which was half-hearted concern mixed with protective deflection, like they were trying to save Madison from consequences the way you save a kid from touching a hot stove. Except Madison was a grown woman and the stove was my life. Hannah was furious in that calm way she gets when she is trying not to say something she will regret, and she sat with me at our kitchen table, laptop open, papers spread out, and she said, "We need to decide right now if Madison is invited to this wedding, because I am not standing at an altar with someone in the front row who tried to steal from you." I wanted to say, of course we will cut her out, because that would have been clean and simple, but I had this knot of family loyalty that was mostly just old training. And I kept imagining my mom's voice saying, "Do not tear the family apart," right before she handed Madison another free pass. I told Hannah I needed a little time, and she looked at me like she understood but did not approve, which was fair. The next obstacle came fast, like Madison sensed I was trying to regain control and decided to yank harder on the leash. Our venue coordinator emailed us saying she needed updated payment confirmation, because there was confusion about our deposit. Confusion is a polite word for someone trying to mess with your plans, and when I called the venue, the coordinator sounded uncomfortable and said someone claiming to be family had called to discuss changes, including shifting our date and adjusting the contract. I asked who. She said Madison Parker. My hands actually started shaking, and I had to sit down on the edge of the couch while Hannah stood in the doorway, watching my face and already knowing the answer. Madison had called our venue, used details only family would know, and tried to alter our wedding like it was her calendar. That is the kind of thing that would sound unbelievable if you have not lived it, but if you have a Madison in your life, you know how they operate. They do not break rules loudly. They slide around them with confidence, and they rely on the fact that most people assume good intentions until proven otherwise. I called Madison, and she answered on the second ring, cheerful. She said, "Hey, big brother, what's up?" I said, "Stop contacting our vendors." She made a little laugh and said, "Wow, you are still on that, I was just helping, since you clearly need it." I told her she was not helping, and if she contacted anyone else, I would get a restraining order, and even saying those words made my heart race because in my family, drawing a boundary was treated like committing a crime. Madison's voice cooled, and she said, "You are being dramatic. Mom agrees with me. You are letting Hannah turn you against your own sister." That's when I realized Madison had already started recruiting enemies, and the enemy was not just her. It was the narrative she built around herself, where she was loving and helpful and I was unstable and controlled by my fiancé. Within a week, I got texts from my aunt on my dad's side, telling me I needed to apologize to Madison for being harsh, and my cousin posted some vague social media thing about family loyalty that made Hannah roll her eyes so hard I thought she might see the back of her brain. The worst moment of Act 2, the moment that made the conflict feel personal in a new way, happened at my parents' house again. During a Sunday dinner I went to against my better judgment because part of me still wanted them to choose me just once, like I was still 12 years old hoping someone would clap at my school event. Madison was there, and she had brought her boyfriend, Tyler, a guy with a salesman grin and the kind of confidence that comes from never being held accountable. Madison stood up in the middle of dinner and announced that she and Tyler were also planning a wedding. My mom gasped happily, my dad blinked like he was trying to do mental math, and Madison smiled straight at me. She said we are thinking late September, maybe the same weekend as Ethan's, because it would be so cute to make it a family wedding season, and honestly, it's easier on everyone's travel. Hannah's fork paused halfway to her mouth, and the room went silent in that tense way where people are waiting to see who will be the bad guy and object. Madison was daring me. She was trying to take my wedding and make it her backdrop. I felt my face heat up, but my voice came out steady. I said, "No, Madison, you are not doing that." My mom immediately said, "Ethan, honey, don't be selfish. It's just a date." Madison smiled wider and said, "See, this is what I mean. He acts like everything is about him." That was the climactic moment of Act 2 for me, because it was not about the date, it was about the fact that my own mother looked at me, her son, and called me selfish for wanting my wedding to stay mine, while Madison sat there like a queen receiving tribute. And while we argued, my phone buzzed again with another alert, because the fraud was not done. Another charge. Another account. Madison had not just crossed a line, she had started jogging. ACT 3, an unexpected ally discovery. I wish I could tell you I suddenly became fearless and cut everyone off in a burst of clarity. But the truth is I hit a point where I just felt exhausted, like my nervous system had been on high alert for decades and finally asked for a day off. Hannah found me sitting in my car in our driveway one night, hands on the steering wheel, not even turning the engine off, just staring. She opened the passenger door, climbed in, and put her hand over mine. She said, "You do not have to keep doing this." I told her I knew, but my voice sounded like I did not believe myself. And that's when our unexpected ally stepped in, someone I had not leaned on since I was a teenager, because she was the only adult back then who ever looked at our family dynamic and called it what it was. My Aunt Renee, my mom's younger sister, was the kind of woman who brought deviled eggs to every holiday and also carried an emotional lie detector in her purse. She called me the next morning and said, "I heard some things, and I am coming over." When she arrived, she did not ask me to calm down or be the bigger person. She asked me for details. Then she pulled out a folder from her tote bag like she had been waiting for this moment. She said, "Ethan, I need you to listen carefully because Madison has been doing this to other people too." I sat at the table and Hannah sat beside me, and Aunt Renee laid out printed emails and screenshots and bank notices, not mine, but my parents'. She had been helping my mom with some paperwork after my mom complained about finances, and Renee noticed odd transfers, odd credit activity, and a pattern that looked a lot like someone siphoning money in small, repeated bites. She said, "Your mother is embarrassed, so she is not telling the whole truth, but your parents took out a home equity line last year, and they think it was for repairs in Madison's MBA classes, but Madison has been moving money around, paying off her own debt, and using their accounts like a personal ATM." I felt my throat tighten, because I knew it was true the way you know a song you have heard your whole life, even if you hate it. Madison did not just steal attention. She stole resources. She stole trust. And my parents let her, because admitting she was wrong would mean admitting they had built their golden child out of excuses. Hannah asked, "How do we prove it?" Aunt Renee tapped the folder. She said, "I have enough for a lawyer to start, and I have a friend at the county clerk's office who helped me pull some public filings, because Madison also has a judgment against her from a credit card company, and she never told anyone, and she is desperate right now, which makes her sloppy." That was the key to the solution, the discovery that made me stop feeling crazy. It was not my imagination. It was not wedding stress. It was a pattern with paperwork. Over the next 2 weeks, Hannah and I moved like we were building a case because we met with an attorney who specialized in identity theft and family financial abuse, and just saying those words out loud made my stomach twist, because I never wanted to think of my sister as a threat, but reality does not care what you want. We gathered my credit reports, the fraud logs, the vendor call history, and Aunt Renee's documents, and our attorney told us something that hit me like a punch. He said, "If you do nothing, she will keep doing this, and if you quietly pay it off or let your parents cover it, you train her that she can do it again with no risk." So we made a plan, and it was not a revenge plan in the movie sense, not some big dramatic humiliation meant to go viral. It was a boundary plan with consequences attached. We would give Madison one chance to undo the damage and admit everything, in writing with repayment terms. If she refused, we would file the police report fully, pursue charges, and send cease and desist notices to every vendor and venue connected to the wedding. Hannah also insisted on one more piece, and this part was personal. She said, "I want her out of our wedding day, not just out of your bank accounts." I agreed. The climactic moment of Act 3 came when we invited my parents to meet us at our attorney's office, because we needed them to hear the truth somewhere neutral, somewhere Madison's charm could not turn the room into her theater. My mom arrived first, tight smile, defensive posture, like she had already decided I was wrong. My dad came in quietly, shoulders heavy, and I saw a sadness in him I had not seen before. Aunt Renee spoke first, calm, firm, and she laid out the evidence like she was setting down plates at Thanksgiving. My mom tried to interrupt, but the attorney stopped her gently and said, "Ma'am, please let us finish." When my mom saw the numbers, the dates, the signatures, the online account links that trace back to Madison's email, her face went pale in a way that made me feel both vindicated and sick, because I did not want my mom to be hurt. I just wanted her to stop hurting me. My dad stared at the page for a long time, then said Madison did this. And my mom whispered she would not. Aunt Renee said she did. Then my mom started crying, not loud, not dramatic, just the kind of crying that happens when denial finally collapses and you are left standing in the rubble. My dad put his hand on her shoulder, and he looked at me like he wanted to apologize for every time he stayed quiet but did not know how to start. My mom said, "What do you want us to do?" And that's when I said the words I had avoided my whole life. I said, "I want you to stop protecting her from reality, even if it hurts." ACT for the climax. The week of the wedding arrived like a storm front, bright on the surface with excitement, but heavy underneath with pressure. Hannah and I kept things moving, final seating charts, final vendor confirmations, a rehearsal dinner at a local restaurant with a private room that smelled like garlic and expensive candles. I tried to keep my focus on Hannah's smile, on the way she squeezed my hand under the table when my nerves spiked, on the fact that I was about to marry someone who felt like peace. Madison, meanwhile, acted like nothing had happened, which is a specific kind of arrogance, the kind that says I have always survived my own choices because other people clean up after me. She texted my mom asking what color she should wear, then texted me a single line that made my blood run cold. She said, "I am still coming. You cannot keep me from my own brother's wedding." I did not respond. Our attorney had already sent her a formal notice about the fraud and the repayment demand, and Madison had refused to sign anything, replying with a long email about how everyone was attacking her and how I had always hated her success, which was almost funny if it had not been so predictable. We filed the full report. We did the boring legal steps that matter. We also hired security for the venue, which felt surreal, like I was some celebrity worried about paparazzi, except my threat was my sister trying to hijack my life. The morning of the wedding, I woke up before my alarm, heart racing, and I sat on the edge of the hotel bed listening to the muted city sounds outside. A snowplow somewhere, a car door slamming, the quiet hum of January. Hannah was still asleep, hair spread across the pillow, and I watched her breathe and reminded myself that today was not about Madison. At the venue, everything looked like what we had dreamed: warm lights, winter greenery, candle glow, friends and family bundled in coats and laughing. The kind of scene that makes you believe in fresh starts. I stood in the back room with my best man, Marcus, who had known me since college and had seen Madison's tactics up close enough to hate them on my behalf. He adjusted my tie, then leaned in. He said, "You good?" I told him I was good, and for a few minutes I meant it. Then the door opened, and the venue coordinator stepped in, face tight, and she said, "Ethan, there is an issue." I felt my stomach drop because of course there was. She said, "Your sister is outside, and she is making a scene." I walked toward the entrance with Marcus beside me and a security guard trailing behind, and as I got closer I heard Madison's voice, loud, bright, accusing, the same tone she used as a kid when she wanted adults to rush in and decide she was right before hearing the whole story. Madison was in a white dress. Not cream, not champagne, not some innocent pale color that could be explained away. White. The kind of white that was meant to be a message. She was crying, but not real crying, performance crying, and she was telling anyone who would listen that her brother was excluding her, that her brother's fiancé had turned him against family, that she deserved to be there, and my mom was nearby, hands fluttering, caught between embarrassment and instinct. This was the greatest challenge because everything in me wanted to explode, to shout, to finally let years of resentment pour out. But if I did that, Madison would win in the way she always won, by making me look unstable while she looked like the victim. So I walked up calmly, and I said, "Madison, you need to leave." She turned to me with that wounded face, and she said, "Are you really doing this to me today?" I said, "Yes." My mom whispered, "Ethan, please." And then Madison reached into her purse and pulled out her phone like a weapon, and she said, "If you kick me out, I am telling everyone what you did. I am telling everyone you are trying to ruin me," and she lifted the phone as if she was about to start recording. Everything seemed like it could fall apart right there, because guests were arriving, heads turning, whispers starting, and I could feel Hannah's day being threatened by Madison's chaos. Then Marcus stepped forward, calm as stone, and he said, "Ma'am, you are not coming in," and he motioned to the security guard. Madison snapped that she was family. The guard said, "Not today." Madison tried to push past, and the guard blocked her, and Madison's mask slipped for half a second, showing real anger, real entitlement, the true face my parents pretended not to see. This was the decisive move, and it came from a place I did not know I had, because I reached into my suit jacket, pulled out an envelope, and handed it to Madison, right there in the entryway in front of my mom, my dad, the coordinator, and a couple of early guests who had paused awkwardly. Madison stared at it, confused. I said, "That is a copy of the fraud report, the case number, and the repayment demand you refused to sign, and if you do not leave right now, I will make sure the officer who called me yesterday comes here instead of calling later." My mom gasped like I had slapped Madison, because in my family, consequences felt like violence when they were aimed at the golden child. Madison's eyes went wide, and for the first time, she looked scared, because suddenly her charm was not enough. She hissed, "You would do that to your own sister." I said, "You did it to me first." Madison looked at my mom, searching for rescue, but my mom just stood there, trembling, eyes wet, and my dad stepped forward, voice quiet, and said, "Maddie, go home." That was the moment I almost broke, because hearing my dad finally say it felt like the universe correcting itself by an inch. Madison stared at him like he had betrayed her. Then she lifted her chin and said, "Fine," and she turned and walked out, white dress swishing like a spiteful flag. I stood there shaking, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of finally not folding. Inside, the music started, the guests settled, and I walked down the aisle toward Hannah, who looked at me with steady eyes and a soft smile that said, "I am here. I am not leaving," and when we said our vows, my voice cracked, not because of Madison, but because I could feel what it meant to choose a life where love did not require being small. Act 5, the resolution. The reception was warm and loud and real, the kind of night where you forget to check your phone because the people in front of you matter more. Friends gave speeches that made everyone laugh. My uncle told a story about me as a kid that I had not heard in years, and Hannah danced with her dad while I watched from the edge of the floor, feeling something I did not expect. Relief. Not the kind that comes from winning an argument, but the kind that comes from stepping out of a role you never auditioned for. Madison was not there. The world did not end. Nobody collapsed. The family did not implode. What happened instead was that the room filled with people who were happy for us, and the spotlight stayed where it belonged, on two people trying to build a life. Later that night, after the last song and the last hug and the last coat retrieved from the rack, Hannah and I went back to our hotel room, kicked off our shoes, and sat on the carpet in our wedding clothes eating cold fries from a takeout box like teenagers sneaking snacks after curfew. Hannah leaned her head on my shoulder and said, "You did it." I knew what she meant. Not just the wedding, the boundary. The next morning, my phone had messages, of course it did. Madison had left voicemails that swung between rage and tears, because that is her style, and my mom had texted me a long paragraph about how she loved both of her kids and wished things could be different. My dad sent a shorter text. He said, "I am proud of you. I am sorry it took me so long." That text hit me harder than any dramatic confrontation, because it was simple and late and still meant something. The legal stuff did not magically disappear. Madison contested everything through an attorney, claiming confusion, claiming mental health, claiming she had permission, and the process became a slow grind of paperwork and deadlines and uncomfortable truths. My parents had to face the fact that their finances were damaged too, and they had to decide whether they were willing to cooperate fully, because doing so would mean admitting publicly that Madison had done this, and that is not an easy admission for parents who built their identity around her shining. Aunt Renee stayed involved, steady and stubborn, refusing to let anyone rewrite the story into something softer. Marcus kept checking on me, reminding me that I was not cruel for wanting accountability. Hannah kept doing what she always does, bringing me back to the present, making coffee, asking what I needed, making our home feel like a place where my nervous system could finally unclench. A few weeks after the wedding, my mom asked if we could meet for lunch, just her and me. We sat in a quiet booth at a diner, the kind with laminated menus and unlimited refills, and my mom looked older than she had at the wedding. She stirred her coffee too much. Then she said, "I do not know how I let it get this far." I could have told her 100 stories. Moments stacked on moments, Madison taking and me shrinking, my mom excusing and my dad avoiding. The whole system built to keep Madison comfortable at everyone else's expense. But I did not want to punish my mom. I wanted the cycle to stop. So I said, "You let it get this far because it was easier to keep her happy than to deal with her angry, and you trained me to accept that." My mom cried quietly, and she said, "I thought you were strong enough to handle it." I said I should not have needed to be. That was as close as we got to a resolution because real life does not wrap itself up neatly, and Madison did not suddenly become a better person just because the spotlight moved. She still believes she is the victim. She still tells people Hannah is controlling. She still posts carefully cropped photos on social media like nothing is wrong, and sometimes I wonder if she actually believes her own story, because people like Madison can live inside their narratives like castles. Here is the aftertaste, the reflection part one keeps circling back to when things are quiet. Payback sounds satisfying when you say it fast, like it is a clean moment of justice, but what it really felt like was grief mixed with freedom, because I did not enjoy seeing my sister exposed, and I did not enjoy watching my mom realize she had been used, and I did not enjoy knowing my dad carried regret like a weight. What I did enjoy, what I will not apologize for, was choosing myself and my marriage and my future without asking permission. And the moral dilemma still hangs there because I know some people would say family is family, forgive and move on, keep the peace, but I also know peace that requires one person to be silent while another person steals is not peace, it is surrender. I do not know what Madison will become after this, and I do not know if my parents will fully stop enabling her when guilt kicks in and she cries the right way, because habits built over decades do not break in a month. What I do know is this. On my wedding day, I finally stepped out of my golden child sister's shadow, and the light did not burn me. It warmed me, and even if the family story stays messy for a while, Hannah and I are writing a new one, and Madison does not get to edit it anymore.